Welcome back. Tonight, we journey quietly back in time, into the dimly lit corners of memory, where a cheerful bear's grin hides untold secrets. In the hush of midnight, let me tell you the story of Freddy Fazbear, a tale that begins with innocent laughter and ends in restless whispers. There will be creaking endoskeletons and soft arcade lights glowing in the dark, distant fans humming in empty rooms, and somewhere in those shadows, the gentle chime of a music box. This is a slow-burning horror story, an overnight narration of how a beloved animatronic bear became a vessel for grief and vengeance, and how even in the darkest of places, a faint light of hope might flicker. Before we delve deeper, take a moment to get comfortable. Close your eyes if you like, and allow the world around you to fade. If you find yourself drawn into this journey, into the soft-spoken horrors of the night, please consider joining us on more midnight explorations. A gentle reminder to subscribe and like if you haven't already. Let the story unfold at its own quiet pace as you breathe slowly and sink into the atmosphere. Now, let us begin. It starts with a memory of warmth and light. The year is sometime in the late 1970s. In a small American town, a new family diner opens its doors. Fredbear's Family Diner. It's a humble little place, the kind that smells of fresh pizza and sugar, with checkered floors that reflect the golden glow of arcade cabinets lining the wall. Children's laughter fills the air each day as families gather under the gentle glow of neon signs. On a modest stage, two animatronic performers delight the audience. A big golden bear named Fredbear and his partner, a grinning golden rabbit named Spring Bonnie. They sing cheerful jingles in voices that crackle softly through old speakers, and their eyes, painted bright and wide, roll and blink in simulated joy. Fredbear is the star of the show, a precursor to the Freddy Fazbear we would come to know. In these early days, he is simply a friendly mascot, arms open wide to welcome kids in for a hug. Parents smile and take Polaroid photos of their kids dancing along to the animatronics. At twilight, as the day's laughter fades, the diner's neon sign buzzes faintly in the dusk. The animatronics go still, their servo motors winding down with a soft whir. In the quiet, one could almost imagine Fredbear's painted smile lowering for the night, as if the characters themselves grew tired after a long day of play. Fredbear's Family Diner was the dream project of two business partners, Henry Emily, a talented engineer and creative soul, and William Afton, a man whose genial smile hid a far more troubled spirit. Together, they poured their hopes into this little restaurant. Henry designed the animatronics, giving them lifelike charm, and William handled the business, donning the Spring Bonnie suit on occasion to entertain the kids. For a while, the diner thrived. It was the kind of place memories were made. Birthday parties with bright balloons, the jingling tune of an ice cream vendor, and the delighted squeals of children chasing each other between the tables. But as with many stories told in whispers, an undercurrent of darkness began to flow beneath the laughter. Late after closing, when the chairs were upturned on tables and the lights dimmed low, Henry would stay behind, tinkering with new animatronic parts, while William lingered in the shadows of the empty dining room. Perhaps it was the quiet that brought out a creeping sense of unease, the way the big Fredbear mascot stood on stage in the dark, silhouette faintly visible by the exit sign's red glow, almost watching. Sometimes, on those lonely nights, one could swear they heard soft thumps or metallic creaks when no one was on stage. Henry often dismissed it as the machine's settling, but William. William listened. Tragedy struck the diner in 1983, shattering the veneer of innocent fun. Henry's young daughter, Charlotte, loved to visit the diner, especially when her father's newest creation was on duty, a security puppet designed to protect the children. One rainy evening, Charlotte found herself outside the diner's door, perhaps after closing, her tiny hands pounding on the glass as raindrops mingled with tears on her cheeks. Earlier that day had been a celebration, an ill-fated birthday party for William Afton's own son, a fragile little boy often called the crying child. That day, the boy's older brother and his friends played a cruel prank, lifting the scared child up to give Fredbear a kiss. They shoved the small boy's head into Fredbear's gaping jaws, not realizing the danger. With a sudden, horrible crunch, Fredbear's spring-loaded jaw snapped shut on the child's head. Gasps turned to screams. The birthday boy went limp, blood trickling from Fredbear's mouth, and the restaurant descended into chaos. This horrific accident would later be known as the Bite, or more specifically, the Bite of '83, the day an animatronic entertainer crushed a child's skull in a terrible malfunction. While the crying child was rushed to the hospital, clinging to life, Henry's daughter Charlotte encountered a disaster of her own outside. In the confusion of closing early, she had been accidentally locked out of the diner by some other kids who didn't realize she was there. The security puppet, programmed to care for children, tried to go after her. We can imagine it pushing against its confined music box, the lid weighed down by gifts piled carelessly on top. By the time the puppet wriggled free and stumbled into the storm after her, it was too late. Through the torrents of rain and flashing lightning, a figure approached the scared little girl, huddled by the locked door. It was William Afton. Perhaps grief from his son's terrible injury had twisted his mind, or perhaps something rotten had always lain buried in his heart. But in that moment, William did the unthinkable. His silhouette loomed over Charlotte and then flashed. He snuffed out her life, leaving her small body in the alley beside the diner. The rain drenched Charlotte's party dress as she lay motionless in a puddle of gathering rainwater. The puppet finally made it outside, its servos shorting in the downpour. One can picture that thin, lanky puppet dragging itself through the puddles, single-minded in its duty to protect. The marionette found Charlotte's body in the alley, the neon glow of the diner's sign reflecting in the puppet's blank eyes as it collapsed beside the girl. Raindrops pinged off the puppet's metal casing as its outstretched wooden arms encircled Charlotte's lifeless form, holding her in a final embrace. In those dark moments, something almost miraculous, or perhaps cursed, occurred. The soul of Charlotte, innocent and unjustly slain, seeped into the puppet. The creation Henry built to safeguard children became possessed by the very child it failed to save. Charlotte's spirit lived on inside that blank-eyed puppet, bound by a mixture of love and unfulfilled purpose. In the aftermath of that harrowing night, Fredbear's family diner could not survive. A pall of tragedy had settled over it. Henry was devastated, mourning his beloved daughter, and William Afton, whose own gravely injured son soon succumbed to his injuries and passed away, was a changed man, withdrawn, his kindness curdled into something hateful. The diner quietly shut down, the doors closing for good under the weight of 2 young deaths. The cheerful yellow Fredbear and spring Bonnie suits were quietly retired, packed away into storage with their mechanisms still stained from the violence. The last customers had long left. Only dust motes remained swirling in the stale air. Outside, the final notice on the door read, "Closed for remodeling." But everyone in town knew the truth. Some horrors cannot be scrubbed clean or painted over. All the while, behind the scenes, a larger company was taking shape. Fazbear Entertainment, born from the partnership of Henry and William, still had plans. Perhaps hoping to bury the memory of the diner's tragedy, the company expanded and rebranded. By later that same year, a new restaurant opened in town, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The cartoonish Fredbear character was replaced with a new lead mascot, Freddy Fazbear, a brown bear in a top hat and bow tie, friendly in appearance, arms open in welcome. He was flanked by 3 new characters, Bonnie the bunny, Chica the chicken, and Foxy the pirate fox, each with their own vibrant personalities and melodies. They were a fresh start, a way to move past the diner's dark legacy. Henry and William kept Fredbear and Spring Bonnie out of sight, perhaps intending to bring them back at a later time, or maybe just unable to destroy the suits that had meant so much to them. For now, those 2 relics stayed in storage, gathering dust, while Freddy and friends took the spotlight. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in the mid-1980s was a larger establishment than the old diner, a bustling pizzeria with colorful murals, an expanded arcade, and party rooms always booked for weeks. During the day, it was easy to believe the nightmare was over. The animatronics played their jolly music on stage, Freddy leading the band with his microphone in hand, and that signature chuckle of his echoing through the dining area. Kids scarfed down slices of pepperoni pizza, while parents relaxed, lulled by the nostalgic charm of the singing animatronic band. If you listened closely, you could hear the whir of their servos and the clink of moving metal beneath their plush exteriors as they performed. And always watching from the walls were the mascots' friendly faces, painted in bright, inviting colors, a cartoon Freddy Fazbear tipping his hat with a grin. Yet, even in the bright light of day, shadows lurked. Unbeknownst to the patrons, in the back rooms and maintenance closets, the past was not gone. The puppet, inhabited by Charlotte's soul, had been transferred over to the new pizzeria as well, hidden now inside a gift box on the prize counter, ever vigilant. The old Fredbear suit, that golden Bonnie, all the things left from the diner, were stowed away. Perhaps Henry hoped that would be the end of it, that he could move on and focus on making children happy again. William Afton, however, had other plans brewing in the darkness. At night, when the last employees left and the lights were turned off one by one, the pizzeria settled into an eerie quiet. The plastic ball pit lay still, and the animatronic band stood frozen on stage, their eyes blank and lifeless without an audience. In those hushed hours, if anyone had been there to see, subtle movements might have been caught on the security cameras, a twitch of Freddy's ear, a flicker of a glowing eye in the dark. The animatronics were free to roam after closing, part of some poorly understood design, or perhaps influenced by the restless soul energy now dwelling within them. The puppet, guided by Charlotte's protective spirit, would occasionally slip out of its box to patrol the restaurant, as if guarding other children even in their absence. It wasn't long before the fragile peace shattered completely. In 1985, an incident occurred that would cement Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's infamy for decades to come, the missing children incident. It began with William Afton and a plan as cruel as it was twisted. Wearing one of the old mascot costumes, some say it was Spring Bonnie, a friendly golden rabbit suit, William lurked on the periphery of a busy afternoon at the pizzeria. He watched, waiting for the right moment. when a child wandered away from a birthday party to go to the restroom, or when two friends left the noisy dining hall in search of the prize counter, William was there. Softly, in that friendly mascot voice, he enticed them. "Hey, kiddo, want to see something cool in the back?" Perhaps a child recognized him as one of the entertainers and implicitly trusted that smiling face of Spring Bonnie. One by one, 5 children went missing inside Freddy Fazbear's pizza. The parents' panic rose with each passing minute. The staff searched frantically, checking bathroom stalls, storage closets, the alley out back, but the children had vanished as if into thin air. A birthday hat lay abandoned under a table, a single shoe lost near the supply closet, little clues that hinted at the struggles that took place. Behind the closed door of a back room, the air hung heavy with a coppery smell of blood. William's deed was done. In that secret room, far from the joyful murals and party decorations, he had taken the lives of those 5 innocent children, snuffing out their laughter forever. The motives behind this massacre remained shrouded in madness and evil. Perhaps it was an urge to exert power, or a manifestation of Afton's own agony and rage after losing his son. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. The walls of Freddy Fazbear's pizza were now soaked in unspeakable horror. Desperate to hide his crimes, William did something truly macabre. He took each small, lifeless body and stuffed them into the mascot suits out on the show floor. Imagine the grotesque sight. The inside of Freddy's chest cavity, meant to house mechanical gears, now holding the limp form of a child. Chica, the chicken's suit, filled with more than just animatronic parts. The suits were roomy, and their costume fur also could absorb a lot. At first, no one realized the atrocity concealed within them. Afton was careful, working swiftly in the dead of night. He believed the bodies would remain hidden, perhaps indefinitely. But the spirits of the children were not at rest. Henry's creation, the puppet, driven by Charlotte's soul, sensed the injustice that had occurred. In a mysterious arcade minigame depicted later, that puppet is shown offering gifts and then life to lifeless figures of children. This was more than allegory. In the darkness of the closed pizzeria, the puppet carried out a grim but compassionate task. It found each of the 5 newly murdered children and somehow, through a power beyond understanding, gave them a chance to live again. We imagine the puppet hovering over each slumped mascot, tears of anguish painted on its ever-grinning face, placing a present or mask in front of them, as in the tales. By whatever supernatural mechanism, perhaps through that force known as remnant, the paranormal essence of human emotion fused into metal. The souls of the children became attached to the animatronics. Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and even that old unused golden Fredbear suit in storage, soon to be known as Golden Freddy, each became host to a child's vengeful spirit. The children's names were later whispered in rumors. Gabriel for Freddy, Fritz for Foxy, Susie for Chica, Jeremy for Bonnie, and Cassidy. Little Cassidy for the Golden Freddy. Though their bodies were hidden, their anger and agony took on a new life inside those mechanical bodies. In the days that followed, as parents of the missing kids pleaded for answers and police swarmed the restaurant, strange things began to occur around the animatronics. Employees reported that the once friendly mascots had begun to smell foul, an odor of decay seeping through the plush fabric of their suits. A brownish, blood-like fluid sometimes oozed at the corners of Freddy's mouth, and patrons saw what looked like mucus or tears near the eyes of the animatronics. Management tried to pass it off as faulty filters or spilled pizza sauce, but many began to feel deeply uneasy in the presence of those robots. Some night guards swore they saw the animatronics move on their own, even when switched off. Flickers of motion in the corner of an eye. One janitor heard a child's sob echoing in an empty room. On one occasion, a day shift worker turned his back on Chica, only to find, upon looking again, that she had subtly shifted posture. Her head now turned directly toward him, with unnervingly human-like sorrow in her painted eyes. Before the police investigation could fully unfold, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was shut down, the first of many closures. The missing children were never found within the building during the initial search, but the suspicion and horrifying clues were enough. Parents refused to bring their kids, and the business crumbled under the weight of the scandal. It closed its doors, leaving the main 4 animatronics and that golden Freddy suit to be dismantled or stored away. Henry, grief-stricken and overwhelmed, stepped back from the company. William Afton, somehow escaping suspicion or blame due to lack of evidence, and perhaps his outward persona of a concerned co-owner, slithered away, avoiding justice for now. Yet, the franchise was not completely dead. Fazbear Entertainment still had some spark of life in it, and in 1987 they attempted a grand reopening, a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with a fresh redesign and brand new animatronics. This time, the company touted improved safety and the latest in technology. They introduced the toy animatronics, shinier, more colorful versions of Freddy and his friends, equipped with advanced facial recognition software and security protocols to protect children. It was as if they were trying to suffocate the dark rumors with a parade of bright lights and happy tunes. The new pizzeria was decorated in pastels and neon, a true product of the late 80s, with wide-eyed cartoon murals and a central stage where Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica performed alongside a mangle of a fox, appropriately named Mangle, and even a new puppet at the prize counter. For a short while it seemed like maybe, just maybe, the darkness had been left behind. But some places, some things, are just magnets for misfortune. The year 1987 proved that history could repeat itself in the most tragic ways. The new and improved Freddy's Pizzeria lasted only a mere few weeks before disaster struck again. The establishment had barely gotten through its grand opening when whispers of strange incidents began filtering to the day shift employees. Children said they saw a yellow bunny peeking around corners, a character that shouldn't have been there. Some nights, the toy animatronics would become inexplicably aggressive, as if overridden by some unseen force. Concerned, the management brought back the older models, the withered original Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, refurbishing them as a backup attraction. Those old animatronics, still possessed by the original 5 children's spirits, were stashed away in the parts and service room, twitching in the dark. They were supposed to be decommissioned, but perhaps they had a will of their own. And then came the fateful final week. Several more children went missing or were found dead inside the establishment. Details are murky. Was it another direct act of William Afton, returning under the guise of that yellow spring Bonnie suit? Or were the haunted animatronics themselves responsible, driven by confusion and rage to claim more innocent lives? The result was the same: panic, grief, and the abrupt halting of all festivities at the pizzeria. As if that weren't enough, an incident occurred that passed immediately into legend: the Bite of '87. During a children's birthday party, with parental eyes turned away for a split second, one of the animatronics clamped its jaws down on a victim's head. This time the victim wasn't a child, but a daytime security guard, or perhaps a patron, a grown person. The frontal lobe of the victim's brain was severely damaged, but incredibly, they survived, at least physically. No one is certain which animatronic caused the bite. Some say it was the mangle of wires and parts that was once Mangle the Fox. Others believe it could have been Toy Freddy, or even one of the withered animatronics unleashed in a moment of chaos. The company never officially named the culprit. In the wake of another scandal, the 1987 location shut its doors just as quickly as it had opened. The shiny new toy animatronics were scrapped, deemed too tainted by bad press, and perhaps possessed glitches that nobody could explain. The older withered animatronics, including Freddy Fazbear himself, were once again slated to be stored and possibly reused someday, as they still held value to the company. Fazbear Entertainment was not yet ready to give up. It seemed nothing, not even these ghastly incidents, could fully kill the allure of Freddy's in the eyes of the corporate owners. There was always a belief that with enough time people would forget, and children's laughter would once again drown out the echoes of screams. So the company tried once more. Several years later, in the early 1990s, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza reopened for what many assumed would be the final time. This location, which some believe opened around 1993, was intended to be a small, low-budget affair, a last-ditch effort to maintain the brand. Management reused the tried-and-true original animatronics. The classic Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, rebuilt and repaired as best as possible, were brought out of retirement. These were beloved characters recognized by the public, but their past was carefully swept under the rug. The decor at this restaurant was simpler, a bit run down even. Peeling posters of cheerful characters hid stains on the wall, and the overhead lights flickered occasionally. The years of neglect showed. By day, it still functioned as a kid's paradise, albeit one that was beginning to feel like a remnant of a different era, struggling to stay relevant. The tables were a bit emptier, and the mascot costumes a bit more threadbare. Yet some children still came, holding parents' hands, drawn by the enduring promise of pizza and play. By this time, William Afton was no longer officially involved with the restaurant's operations. He had slipped into the shadows, his murderous activities unknown to the world at large, but very much continuing in secret. Henry had mostly stepped away too, presumably unable to continue facing the pain these establishments brought him. Instead, Fazbear Entertainment hired ordinary managers and employees to run the place. One such employee was the phone guy, who recorded cheery yet nervous training cassettes for new security recruits. He warned them in a light-hearted tone to keep an eye on those animatronics at night, as they had a tendency to wander due to free-roaming mode, and could be a bit quirky, an understatement hiding the truly disturbing behavior of the possessed machines. Into this patchwork operation stepped a new night guard, a young man who called himself Mike Schmidt, seeking a simple summer job to pay bills. In truth, Mike Schmidt was an alias. The guard was none other than Michael Afton, William's eldest son, who had been living with guilt and a grim purpose. Michael had learned of his father's crimes and had made it his mission to right the wrongs as best he could. Taking the night shift at Freddy's was Michael's way of getting closer to the source of the hauntings and perhaps finding his twisted father. So, in the stillness of a nearly empty pizzeria, Michael began his week-long vigil, armed with nothing but a flickering monitor display, security cameras, and a failing flashlight. Those 5 nights in 1993 were a test of courage unlike any other. As the clock ticked past midnight, the building seemed to wake up in a whole new way. The animatronics, inhabited by those long-suffering children's souls, were active and restless. While during the day they played the role of cheerful entertainers, at night their true nature showed. Michael found that out quickly. Sitting in the cramped guard office, he listened to the phone guy's nightly instructions. Each midnight call was friendly enough, though the phone guy's words grew more dire as the nights progressed, talking of how the animatronics might not recognize him as a person after hours, how they might see him as an endoskeleton without a suit and try to force him into one, a process that would be, as he said with a nervous laugh, fatal. Michael already knew he wasn't dealing with normal robots. These were ghosts in metal cages, and at night they were free to roam and enact their confused vendettas. Imagine Michael's perspective, peering into grainy security camera feeds, flipping from the show stage to the hallways, to the party rooms, every so often catching a glimpse of something moving in the dark. Freddy's eyes shining from the darkness at the far end of the hall. Bonnie's empty face suddenly filling the camera view before the feed cuts to static. Chica lurking beside the restrooms, jaw slack and eyes blackened. And Foxy, out of order yet slyly peeking out from behind his tattered curtain in Pirate's Cove. Each animatronic moved with jerky, unnatural motions, their once friendly features now frightening in the low resolution of the monitors. As the nights wore on, Michael could hear distant echoes of a child's giggle or a haunting lullaby-like tune plinking on a music box. And he knew he was not alone. On the fourth night, the recordings from Phone Guy took a terrifying turn. The phone message played the sound of garbled animalistic screeches and an ominous jingle, implying that the Phone Guy had been finally caught by the animatronics himself. In fact, it was said that Golden Freddy, the ghostly, limp golden bear that sometimes appeared at random, had been the one to claim Phone Guy's life in that back office. Michael pressed on nonetheless. By the skin of his teeth, he survived through 5 nights, and even an unauthorized 6th and 7th night as he continued to investigate. He experienced firsthand the aggressive assaults of the animatronics, and managed to endure until dawn each time by carefully conserving power and keeping those mechanical beasts at bay. On the final night of his shift, Michael, as Mike Schmidt, was fired. The notice cited tampering with the animatronics and odor as reasons. Indeed, spending so many nights in close quarters with the undead, putrid-smelling mascots had left him with a smell of death that no amount of showers could fully remove. With that final closure in 1993, it seemed the book was closing on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The restaurant quietly shut its doors for the last time at the end of the year, and Fazbear Entertainment all but crumbled under bankruptcy and public distrust. One by one, the animatronics went offline and dark. The ghosts of those children remained, their souls still tied to the physical remnants of those suits and the mysterious power of Remnant that kept them tethered. But with no more customers, no more business, the animatronics would be confined to silence and darkness, at least for a while. For William Afton, however, the story was far from over. While the world thought the Freddy Fazbear chapter concluded, he was in fact making sinister moves in the shadows. During the years when Freddy's was closed to the public, William had been obsessively studying the paranormal phenomena he'd witnessed. He had seen with his own eyes that the spirits of the children persisted. His own son Michael, by a stroke of something between science and supernatural, had survived encounters that should have killed him. How? The answer lay in that strange substance, Remnant. Remnant was the mixing of the tangible with the intangible, of memory with the present. Essentially, the physical manifestation of memories and soul fused into metal. William sought to harness this power. In secret workshops, he began constructing new animatronics, designed not for entertaining kids, but for capturing them. These were the fun-time animatronics, like the pink-accented circus baby, a clownish girl animatronic with a hypnotic voice and hidden claws, and others like Ballora the ballerina, and Funtime Freddy with a sinister grin. These he built under the guise of a new venture, Circus Baby's Pizza World, which barely opened before a horrific accident struck. Tragically, the test run of Circus Baby ended in William's daughter, Elizabeth Afton, losing her life. Little Elizabeth, fascinated by the beautiful animatronic with red pigtails and a soothing voice, got too close to Circus Baby when no one was looking. Baby's programming, or perhaps the twisted will of William's designs, triggered. A claw emerged from her torso, grabbing Elizabeth and pulling her inside. In an instant, the little girl was gone, scooped up into the animatronic's cold embrace. William's heart shattered. Though a monster to others' children, he hadn't intended to sacrifice his own. Elizabeth's soul, full of curiosity and trust, became fused with Circus Baby. One telltale sign appeared in Baby's design afterward. Her eyes, originally blue, turned a vivid green, the same color as Elizabeth's. To the public, Circus Baby's Pizza World was shut down under the pretense of a gas leak. Secretly, William stored the Funtime animatronics in an underground facility, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, a clandestine location where the animatronics could still be used, rented out privately for gatherings, while he studied them and the remnant within. William's obsessions continued to grow. He had lost 2 of his own children now, his youngest son to the bite, and Elizabeth to Baby. And he was responsible for countless other deaths. Perhaps in his twisted mind, he thought he could still set things right for his family. Or maybe he simply hungered for the forbidden knowledge of conquering death itself. Either way, the underground halls of Circus Baby's Rentals would soon become the stage for another nightmarish chapter. Michael Afton, resilient and determined, had learned of this secret facility and what had happened to his sister. Following instructions left by his father, a cryptic message that said, "I will put her back together," Michael went underground, literally, to find and rescue Elizabeth. Thus began the events many know as 5 Nights at Freddy's, sister location. Michael took on a job as a technician for Circus Baby's Rentals, descending each night into a surreal and claustrophobic bunker of white tiles and flickering fluorescent lights where the Funtime animatronics were kept. There, in rooms ironically named the Scooping Room and Auditorium, he confronted the creepy, lifelike animatronics that his father had built. They would whisper to him through speakers or sing lilting songs that echoed in those empty halls. Circus Baby herself spoke to Michael gently at first, seemingly helpful, perhaps due to Elizabeth's influence, addressing him as if she knew him. Over 5 nights, Michael endured a gauntlet of horrors orchestrated by the Funtime animatronics. On one night, in a chamber filled with oversized fan blades humming softly, he had to hide in the darkness while Ballora, the blind ballerina, slid about searching for him with outstretched arms, music box melodies underscoring the terror. On another, he was forced to crawl through an air vent, the distant clank of metal alerting him that something was behind, chasing in the pitch dark. Each task pushed him closer to the edge, yet he persisted, driven by a need to make amends for the family name and to save what remained of his sister's spirit. All the while, unbeknownst to Michael, his father William was on a parallel mission back at the old, abandoned Freddy Fazbear's pizza location from 1993. At some point in the mid-90s, William returned to the shuttered pizzeria, possibly to recover the possessed metal inside the original animatronics for his remnant experiments. In that decaying building, walls peeling and silence thick as a blanket, William prowled the empty rooms armed with tools. He located the deactivated animatronics, the old Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy that had once housed the missing children's souls. With a sense of purpose, he began to dismantle them one by one. Metal joints clattered to the floor in pieces. Wires were torn out. Perhaps Afton believed that by destroying the animatronic hosts, he could release and capture the spirits or their remnant for himself. If so, he gravely miscalculated. As William tore apart those animatronics, the spirits of the children were indeed released, but not in a way he expected. In the darkness of that safe room, flickering light might have illuminated the faint shapes now coalescing around him. The ghosts of the 5 children, appearing as shadowy figures or perhaps even as the faded, ghostly versions of the characters they had inhabited. They advanced on the man who had stolen their lives. Imagine the temperature dropping, a spiritual chill filling the air. William, for the first time, felt true, visceral fear. He stumbled back as the specters crept closer. This was their moment of vengeance. William's breath caught in his throat. In a panic, he looked for a place to hide. And there, against the wall, he saw it. The old spring Bonnie suit, his favorite disguise, standing vacant as if beckoning him. This was one of the same spring-lock suits from the old diner, designed to be worn by a performer, but also function as an animatronic. In desperation, William did the unthinkable and climbed into the spring Bonnie suit to escape the ghosts, hoping the heavy costume could shield him from their wrath. In those days, the spring-lock suits were dangerously temperamental. They used spring-loaded mechanisms to switch between human wearable mode and animatronic mode, held back by delicate locks that could fail if damp or jostled too much. Hiding inside the suit, William could likely barely see out through the suit's eye holes at the advancing ghosts. A hysterical, ironic laughter bubbled up from him. After all his cunning and cruelty, here he was, cowering like a scared child in the embrace of a grinning rabbit costume. But his laughter proved to be his undoing. Whether it was the tears of sweat running down his face, or the shaking of his body, or perhaps the spirits reaching out, something triggered the spring locks. In an instant, dozens of spring-loaded mechanisms snapped open inside the suit. It was like a bear trap slamming shut all over William's body. Steel bolts and gears impaled his flesh from neck to foot. His laughter turned into a blood-curdling scream as the spring-lock failure did its grisly work. The sound of crunching and ripping accompanying the violent convulsions of the suit. Blood poured out of the suit's joints, pooling onto the floorboards beneath him. William's eyes bulged in shock and agony, and then silence. The ghosts watched as the very suit William had used to kill became his Iron Maiden. The man who had eluded justice had finally faced a twisted karma. William Afton's body went limp inside the spring Bonnie suit. His last sight may have been those children's spirits watching as he took his final, ragged breath. With their murderer seemingly dead, the spirits had their vengeance and began to fade, perhaps finally able to move on, or at least content that justice was served. And so William Afton, the notorious child killer, was no more, or so it appeared. In reality, his story was far from over. His body, now entwined forever with the spring Bonnie suit, remained hidden in that sealed safe room of the old pizzeria, a room that had been covered up in blueprints and invisible to all but Afton himself. For 30 long years, William's corpse lay trapped in the dry air and darkness, the circuitry and costume fused with his decaying flesh. Over time, the identity between man and machine blurred, and the once bright yellow rabbit suit grew moldy and tattered, turning an olive green with age. William Afton was gone, but something remained. A haunted, undead shell housing a relentless soul that refused to die. During those decades, the world moved on. The tragedies of Freddy Fazbears became whispery old news, the stuff of local ghost stories and urban legends. Kids who had grown up attending birthday parties at Freddy's in the 80s might recall creepy rumors that the animatronics sometimes moved at night, or that you could see blood around Freddy's teeth at closing time. For a time, Fazbear Entertainment tried to rebrand or forget. Lawsuits were quietly settled. The unsolved missing children's cases lingered in police files but eventually went cold. The world might have permanently closed the book on Freddy Fazbear, if not for a peculiar twist of fate and the insatiable curiosity that people have for the macabre. By the early 2020s, a generation of gamers and horror enthusiasts who remembered the old rumors spurred a resurgence of interest in the dark history of Freddy's. A small local amusement park saw an opportunity and announced a new haunted house attraction, Fazbear's Fright, set to open in 2023. The idea was to capitalize on the legend, to recreate the eerie atmosphere of the notorious pizzeria for thrill seekers. The organizers scavenged whatever relics they could find. Old circuit boards, a rusty Freddy Fazbear head, faded photographs, ripped posters with the cartoon characters, maybe even the creepy puppet mask from an alley sale. These items were carefully arranged in dimly lit halls with flickering green lights and uncanny sound effects for ambiance. They wanted it to be as authentic as possible, to make guests feel like they'd stepped into a cursed pizzeria after hours. In their search for authentic props, the crew stumbled upon something far more real and horrifying than any mannequin or replica could ever be. Hidden behind a sealed-off wall in the remains of the old Freddy's building, they found the desiccated spring Bonnie suit, with William Afton's mummified remains still inside. To them, it was the ultimate prize, a real piece of Freddy's history. They didn't fully understand what they had found, perhaps assuming it to be just an old animatronic or costume, and transported it to Fazbear's Fright to be featured as the main attraction. Thus, in trying to bring back the ghost of Freddy's past, they literally brought back its most dangerous phantom. The being that was once William Afton awakened inside the suit, now known by a new name, Springtrap, so called for the springs that had trapped him in a fate worse than death. Fazbear's Fright opened to the public, with a new night guard hired to watch over the attraction in the week leading up to its official launch. This guard, perhaps unsuspecting or just eager for an easy job, spent the nights in a security office not unlike the ones in the old pizzerias. But what was meant to be a simple guard duty in a building of spooky props turned into another 5 nights of terror. Springtrap roamed the halls of the horror attraction, very much alive in some unnatural way. The limp and torn rabbit ears of the suit held upright by the thing inside, one eye glowing, exposed human teeth sneering from within the costume's head. It moved slowly, but with intent, the decades of rot having stiffened its limbs, and it hungered, whether for violence or something more. It was unclear. As the night guard checked cameras and rebooted faulty systems, they quickly realized that the real danger in Fazbear's Fright was not the cheesy jump scare props or ghostly sound effects, but this single animatronic stalking closer and closer each night. Some say the guard who faced Springtrap in Fazbear's Fright was Michael Afton once again, following rumors to finish what he started with his father. Others think it was just an unfortunate employee. Regardless, the goal became survival. Springtrap, carrying William's undying fury, attempted to reach the guard through any means, sometimes climbing through vents or appearing suddenly at the threshold of the office, a ghastly silhouette of rabbit ears and skeletal limbs in the doorway. The guards' only defenses were audio recordings, mimicked child's laughter used to lure the creature away, and managing faulty old systems that left cameras and air conditioning constantly failing. It was as if the building itself was succumbing to the influence of Afton's restless spirit, glitching and malfunctioning as the nights wore on. As this was unfolding, paranormal occurrences started happening. Ghostly apparitions of animatronics, dubbed phantoms, haunted the guard. The scorched hallucinations of Chica or Foxy would appear and disappear, possibly residual memories clinging to Springtrap or the very objects in the attraction. The atmosphere of Fazbear's fright grew heavier night by night, a sense that all the past wrongs were converging at once. On the final scheduled night before opening, fate intervened in a dramatic way. A fire broke out in Fazbear's fright. To this day, it's unclear if it was an accident, faulty wiring sparking among the old decorations, or if it was intentionally set, perhaps by the guard themselves or by an unseen force. The flames spread quickly, feeding on dry wooden props and old pirate curtains. Within minutes, the horror attraction was an inferno. The night guard narrowly escaped, flames licking at their heels as they fled into the cool, early morning darkness. Inside Springtrap, that amalgamation of man and machine was seen thrashing, engulfed by fire. For a moment, illuminated by roaring flames, onlookers might have seen the rabbit figure reaching out, as if in agony before the ceiling collapsed. The entire building was consumed, and with it, seemingly, the last remnant of William Afton. In the aftermath, charred pieces of the attraction were salvaged. Some items were sold at auction, remnants of a remnant, so to speak. And one urban legend insists that Springtrap was not completely destroyed in the blaze, that somewhere in the ashes, the body was gone. If true, it meant that even fire could not completely cleanse the evil that was Afton. The animatronic souls, on the other hand, might have finally earned their rest from that ordeal. Some believe that the fire at Fazbear's fright freed the spirits of the original children at last, their purpose of vengeance fulfilled. But one spirit in particular was not ready to move on, the one tied to the Golden Freddy, the one who harbored the greatest fury. While Fazbear's fright was burning to cinders, another figure was quietly planning behind the scenes. Henry Emily, long absent from the Freddy's business, never stopped mourning his daughter Charlotte. He had spent years piecing together what had happened, understanding that the animatronics were possessed, that his old friend William was behind the murders and had somehow survived beyond death. With William's return and possible escape from the fire, Henry knew it was time to finish everything once and for all. Sometime after the Fazbear's fright incident, under Henry's guidance, Fazbear Entertainment, or what was left of it, listed a peculiar job opportunity in the papers, effectively inviting someone to reopen a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza under a franchising deal. This was a trap laid in the hopes of drawing out any remaining darkness. Michael Afton, seeking redemption, answered the call, becoming the franchisee and manager of a ramshackle new pizzeria location in the 2020s. It was less a true business and more a front, a cheap, eclectic restaurant which Michael operated by day, but whose true purpose was to lure all the remaining animatronic beings together in one place. Over the course of a week, he intentionally brought in the troubled, haunted animatronics that had resurfaced. A withered scrap baby, the remnants of his sister's animatronic fused with Elizabeth's vengeful spirit, now lurking outside scavenging for parts. Molten Freddy, a tangled mass of wires and parts containing the combined consciousness of the other fun-time animatronics, and perhaps the souls within them. Lefty, a black bear animatronic secretly built to capture and contain the puppet, and thus Charlotte's soul. And last, Springtrap, a grotesquely rebuilt form of Springtrap, housing William Afton's undying soul, drawn in by the promise of new victims or the scent of remnant like a hungry predator. Each night of that final week, Michael turned the lights low, sat in his makeshift office checking a rusty old terminal, and salvaged these animatronic scraps one by one. The building creaked, and in the silence he could hear them shuffling in the darkness, whispering in mechanical tones, eyes shining like stars in an empty sky. It was a harrowing process, intentionally bringing these malevolent beings inside, but it was necessary for Henry's plan to work. Michael, facing the unrecognizable husk that was once his father in the form of Springtrap, managed to keep himself composed. Perhaps part of him felt pity seeing what William had become, but he remembered the atrocities and steeled himself. Finally, when all the pieces were assembled, Henry sprung his trap. Over the building's intercom, Henry's voice calmly addressed the gathered animatronics. In that moment, he revealed that this was never about reopening happily, but about ending the nightmare. Henry spoke to the souls trapped in the machinery, urging them to let go. Be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. His voice was gentle and sad, offering those lost children a final rest. And then his tone turned hard as he directed words at William, the one you shouldn't have killed, as the lore goes, delivering a final condemnation. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. Henry's words echoed with righteous fury. He even took a moment to apologize to his own daughter, the puppet, acknowledging Charlotte's presence and role. He reassured her that her job was done, that she could go. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends for all of us. And with a heavy heart, Henry set the ending in motion. In an instant, flames roared to life throughout the building. Henry had rigged the pizzeria to burn down with everyone, and himself, inside it. Yes, Henry stayed, ensuring there would be no escape for the abominations he'd trapped. The fire spread rapidly, crackling through the cheap decorations and crawling up the walls. Scrap Baby shrieked as her metal began to melt. Elizabeth's spirit finally consumed in the blaze. Molten Freddy's tangle of parts crumbled, the many voices within it going silent one by one. Lefty, with the puppet inside, sat quietly in a corner, perhaps with Charlotte's soul finally at peace as the flames danced around. Michael, brave Michael, who had signed up for this, knowing it was a one-way trip, did not attempt to flee. He had already died once in a sense, back when the scooper hollowed him out, and yet he kept living through Remnant. Now he chose to perish in the flames, side by side with the monsters, to ensure they all stayed in one place. As for William, Springtrap, ever the cowardly predator at heart, might have tried to claw his way out, but he was surrounded by fire and vengeful spirits at every turn. In those last moments, perhaps he even saw Charlie's puppet looming before him, or the outlines of the 5 missing children appearing in the smoke, beckoning him to his end. William's soul, so steeped in evil, had evaded hell itself, but Henry was determined to deliver it to its rightful destination. As the building burned to the ground, outside onlookers might have seen the inferno and heard unearthly screeching, or maybe nothing at all beyond the crackle of fire. When the morning sun rose, nothing remained of that pizzeria but blackened rubble and a lingering column of smoke against the sky. Henry's gambit had succeeded. He set them free. Take a deep breath. If you've stayed with me this far through the darkness, perhaps leave a like or a little comment to let me know you're still here, awake in these small hours. All right, on with our story. In the aftermath, those words he spoke held true. As the smoke cleared, the agony of every tragedy began to fade away, as it should. The children's spirits, most of them, finally could move on, no longer tethered by rage and pain. One could imagine them, little figures holding hands, walking into a warm light beyond the veil of this world. Charlotte, Henry's daughter, perhaps was at the front, leading them with the puppet's mask finally set aside. Just a girl going home. For Michael, his long quest ended in the only closure he could hope for. He helped end the evil his father began. But William Afton, the old friend Henry addressed in that final speech, the murderer who always said he'd come back, where did he go? Henry intended that soul to be swallowed by the darkest pit of hell, never to return. For a while, it seemed that's exactly what happened. William found himself trapped in something much worse than a spring lock, a personal purgatory. In the depths of whatever afterlife awaited him, William was tormented relentlessly by visions of the animatronics he had created, a never-ending cycle of nightmares paying him back for every ounce of suffering he caused. Some say it was one particular spirit, perhaps Cassidy, the vengeful child inside Golden Freddy, who kept him alive just to torture him, ensuring he'd be caught in an endless ultimate custom night of horrors. Within that looping nightmare, William, or his soul, would hear taunting voices, scuttling claws, the laughter of children that turned into screams over and over, a fitting hell for a man who inflicted hell on others. You might think that would be the end of William Afton. It should have been. But William's twisted legacy found yet another way to claw back into the land of the living. The world moved on around the ruins of Freddy's. Years passed, and people only remembered the Fazbear name through hazy recollections and ghost stories told at slumber parties. Fazbear Entertainment, somehow, still existed as an entity on paper, in a bold, bizarre move to salvage their image, or perhaps simply to profit from infamy. The company commissioned a virtual reality game in the late 2020s. This VR experience, called the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, was meant to recount the urban legends of the franchise in game form, essentially acknowledging the past incidents, but playing them off as if they were nothing more than spooky stories. They wanted to control the narrative and make light of what happened, turning tragedy into entertainment one more time. Development of the VR game began. With a team of developers scanning old circuits and code from any salvaged Fazbear tech they could find to make the game as authentic as possible. Unfortunately, in doing so, they unwittingly unleashed a virus lurking in those old circuit boards, piece by piece, line by line of code. The essence of William Afton, that indomitable soul full of agony and evil, wove itself into the VR game. This digital Afton took the form of a sinister yellow bunny within the game's code, an anthropomorphic glitch with a toothy grin and piercing eyes, soon to be known as Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap was essentially William Afton's soul surviving as a digital entity. Even from a fiery grave, Afton's catchphrase held true: "I always come back." During the testing phase of the VR game, quality assurance tester began noticing odd things. Hidden tapes left by another developer warned of a strange anomaly in the code, an entity that shouldn't be there. As players put on their VR headsets, they occasionally saw the golden rabbit figure dancing slowly at the periphery of a game level, beckoning them closer. Glitchtrap was cunning and patient, studying the game's users, waiting for a chance to escape. He found it by ensnaring a troubled tester, a young woman known to us as Vanessa. Through hypnotic suggestion, and perhaps even a form of digital possession, Glitchtrap influenced Vanessa to become his follower. By the end of the VR development, Glitchtrap managed to escape the digital realm by merging with Vanessa's mind. The virus, the spirit of Afton, had found a living host, a puppet to wear in the real world once more. Over the months that followed, Vanessa's behavior changed. By day, she was a meek security guard working for Fazbear Entertainment's new projects. But in secret, she was compelled by Afton's will. She took on a new persona that echoed Afton's old guise, a mascot costume, this time a disturbingly homemade-looking white bunny suit with a fixed grin. She became Vanny, the reluctant agent of Glitchtrap. Under his influence, she was preparing for something, gathering materials, perhaps even targeting lone children, to somehow facilitate Afton's full return to a physical form. Meanwhile, Fazbear Entertainment charged ahead with their next grand venture, the Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, an enormous indoor entertainment complex and mall that would be the ultimate celebration of the Freddy brand. By the early 2030s, the Pizzaplex opened its doors, a neon-drenched wonderland of pizza, games, and attractions for all ages, built on multiple floors under a kaleidoscope of lights. It was an environment so removed from the dingy diners of the past that it seemed Freddy's had finally transformed into something benign and purely fun. This mega mall had everything: a bowling alley, a cinema, a laser tag arena, and of course the grand auditorium where the new Glamrock animatronics performed live concerts for cheering crowds. These Glamrocks were shiny and modern. Glamrock Freddy himself was reimagined as an upbeat, cool mascot who played the role of a lead singer to his band. Roxanne Wolf on keytar, Montgomery Gator on bass, Glamrock Chica on guitar. Children adored their retro 80s aesthetic and friendly, high-tech interactions. Fazbear Entertainment even programmed them with sophisticated AI to converse with and entertain guests. It seemed like the old horrors were truly gone, relegated to hidden Easter eggs on arcade machines and souvenir t-shirts that cheekily referenced the bite of '83 or other such myths. But Freddy Fazbear's legacy was never just about pizza and games. It was built on restless spirits and unresolved crimes. And the Mega Pizzaplex was unwittingly built upon those very ruins. Quite literally, in fact. Buried deep beneath the Pizzaplex was the remains of the old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, where Henry's fiery trap had been sprung. The company either ignored or was unaware of the unsanctified ground on which they constructed their mall. There, in the dark, sealed-off depths below ground, lay the burnt husk of William's last animatronic form and the amalgamated agony of any fragmented remnant that survived the fire. It was a ticking time bomb of evil, waiting. For a while, the Pizzaplex ran smoothly, but it wasn't long before Vanessa, as Vanny, found her way into a position as a security guard at the Pizzaplex. Under Glitchtrap's influence, she had a mission to continue, to help bring Afton back properly. She orchestrated happenings behind the scenes, interfering with the Glamrock animatronics' programming when she could. The most unsettling of these manipulations was the alteration of the animatronics' behavior at night. a reversion to the old ways of hunting intruders and serving an unknown malice. Except one of them resisted. Glamrock Freddy, the star of the show, experienced a mysterious malfunction one late night during a performance. He collapsed on stage mid-show. After rebooting, something was different in him, as if the glitch that had afflicted the others skipped him, or perhaps purged something from his system. Some believe that in that glitch, Glamrock Freddy might have been freed from any malicious code, or even that a familiar protective soul had quietly taken residence inside him. A theory, but unconfirmed. Whatever the case, Glamrock Freddy emerged from his shutdown. Good. Not long after, on one fateful night, a young boy named Gregory managed to hide inside the Pizzaplex past closing time. Gregory was resourceful, but had no family looking for him. Perhaps a homeless child who had taken to sneaking into the Pizzaplex for shelter. When the security shutters locked at midnight, he found himself trapped inside for the night, locked in with the roaming animatronics and a certain security guard whose friendly smile hid a dark secret. The stage was set for one last nightmare to play out. A final confrontation between innocence and the decade-old legacy of Freddy's horrors. Gregory soon discovered that after midnight, the once friendly Glamrock animatronics prowled the empty neon halls with sinister intent, their eyes glowing a menacing red whenever they detected him. They called out in sing-song tones, uttering phrases like, "Staff only," or "Let me take you to your parents," but with an unmistakable threat underlying the words. The mall's lights were lowered for closing, leaving only the glow of arcade screens and flicker of novelty stage lights. In the distance, the clank of robotic footsteps on tile could be heard, and sometimes a garbled announcement on the PA system, likely Vanessa coaxing Gregory to come out of hiding. Fearful and alone, Gregory found an unexpected ally. Glamrock Freddy. The big animatronic bear, upon hearing Gregory's frightened voice during his initial malfunction, opened his stomach hatch, designed normally for fun birthday surprises, and hid the boy inside. "You're broken," Freddy gently told Gregory at first, meaning he was hurt or lost. In truth, it was Freddy who was breaking free from his malicious programming in a miraculous way. The two formed a bond of trust nearly immediately. Gregory could climb inside Freddy's chest cavity and move around undetected by the others, so long as Freddy had sufficient battery power. Through the long hours of that night, Freddy became Gregory's guardian, protective, compassionate, addressing Gregory as superstar with a fatherly warmth that was both comforting and uncanny coming from a giant robot. As they navigated the Pizzaplex's many themed attractions, Gregory and Freddy discovered the truth piece by piece. Vanessa, the security guard, was not what she seemed. Gregory caught glimpses of a white bunny mascot sneaking about. That was Vanny, Vanessa under Afton's influence, who giggled eerily as she hunted the boy with a knife in hand. Some staff robots had been reprogrammed to report or even capture Gregory. Worse, the other Glamrocks, Chica, Roxy, and Monty, were relentless in pursuing him. Freddy hypothesized that they were corrupted by some signal or malware, likely tied to Vanny's tampering or Afton's nearby presence. Indeed, somewhere beneath the gleaming floors, Afton's evil was reawakening. Through trials and tribulations, decommissioning the other animatronics one by one to secure upgrades for Freddy so he could better protect and accompany Gregory, the pair inched toward the heart of the mystery. In one chilling moment, Freddy stood before a dusty old elevator hidden in a maintenance area. He recognized the layout. With a trembling voice and a hint of deeper awareness, Freddy said, "I feel like I've been here before." Some part of him, Perhaps traces of memories from other Freddy iterations, or something of Michael Afton's lingering influence if one believes the theories, knew that an old evil lurked below. Gregory and Freddy descended into the depths, eventually finding themselves in the ruins of the old pizzeria that Henry burned. What a haunting sight it was, a decayed restaurant buried under a shiny new mall, complete with moss-covered dining booths, collapsed stages, and charred animatronic parts fused into the floor. In the center of it all was a massive, cavernous space, the very place where Henry's plan had reached its fiery conclusion years before. And there, in that cavernous lair, they found William Afton in yet another form. This time he appeared as a withered corpse intertwined with machinery, dubbed Burntrap by those who encountered him. Essentially, it was Springtrap's rotted body further augmented with wires, control panels, and life support systems. What remained of Afton was horrifying. A half-skeletal figure, still clad in remnants of a burnt rabbit suit, twitching with unnatural life. He had been rebuilt or sustained by an amalgam of technology, possibly by Vanessa's efforts or by his own inhuman resilience. Afton's new form sat upon a throne of cables in a secret control room. The air stank of burnt oil and decay. Monitors around him flickered with static and old camera feeds. As soon as Gregory and Freddy stumbled into his lair, Afton's corrupted presence reached out. Through those tangled wires, he seized control of Glamrock Freddy's programming, an ability born of the virus and his lingering influence over anything bearing the Fazbear imprint. Freddy's eyes flashed purple as Afton attempted to puppeteer the bear to turn against Gregory. It was agonizing for Freddy, who cried out in a broken voice, warning Gregory that he cannot fight it for long. In that moment, decades of history seemed to repeat, the once gentle mascot being used as a puppet of malevolence. But Gregory's trust in his friend did not waver. With quick thinking, the young boy activated mechanisms in the room designed to fend off intruders, including a ventilation purge that unleashed fire. Flames burst from pipes, engulfing Afton's withered form in searing heat, interrupting his control over Freddy. In the chaos, another presence stirred in the depths. The blob, a monstrous amalgamation of agony and leftover animatronic parts, formed perhaps from the remains of molten Freddy and other scrap, fused together by the collective suffering of lost spirits, descended from the ceiling like a tangle of black wires and familiar faces. It had many glowing eyes and the molten, melted faces of animatronics from past iterations. A horrifying embodiment of unfinished business. With a great swipe, the blob ensnared Burntrap Afton, wrapping him in its coils. William Afton, monster in every sense, was caught. As he struggled, the blob dragged him back into the shadows, its massive parts retreating into a dark pit. Perhaps this was the final, definitive end, the very agony he created now consuming him whole. Gregory and Glamrock. Freddy knew they had to escape. The lair was collapsing as fire spread and the structure of the old pizzeria gave way. They raced upwards through crumbling concrete halls, dodging falling debris. Behind them, gouts of flame and sparks illuminated the nightmare they left behind. A fitting funeral pyre for Afton's legacy. They emerged back into the Pizzaplex's ground level as alarms blared and fire suppression systems sprayed mist. In some endings, Gregory managed to finally confront Vanny on the rooftop, disabling her with the help of hacked robots, or even pulling off her mask to reveal Vanessa's face, breaking her free from the spell. In one scenario, the unmasked Vanessa, now free of Glitchtrap's control, helped Gregory and Freddy escape the burning Pizzaplex. Together they watched from a hilltop as the massive mall, that gleaming temple of indulgence and fun, smoldered and burned, the dawn sky turning orange with smoke. In that quiet moment, Gregory sat beside Freddy's severed animatronic head, all that could be saved of him, and beside Vanessa, an unlikely trio bound by the events of the night, sharing a sunrise and an ice cream in a hopeful, somber peace. In every case, by the time the sun fully rose, the Mega Pizzaplex was sealed off and shut down. The building that had once echoed with children's laughter and pop music was now silent, cordoned off by authorities, destined to join the long line of cursed Fazbear properties left to rot. Gregory survived, carrying with him the scars and lessons of that long night. Vanessa, freed from Afton's grasp, had a chance at redemption. And Freddy, the animatronic who defied his own programming to become a guardian, became perhaps the first animatronic in Fazbear history to truly protect a human child rather than harm one. Now, standing at the end of this long, harrowing story, we reflect on Freddy Fazbear's evolution. From the small family diner to a giant pizzaplex, the name Freddy Fazbear has been tied to innocent joy and unspeakable tragedy. Freddy, the cheerful brown bear mascot, has worn many faces, a source of delight, a vessel for restless spirits, an object of fear in the dark, and finally, an unexpected hero. The animatronic bear that started as a symbol of childhood fun became an avatar for the grief and vengeance of murdered children. The very suit that sang happy birthday by day was stalked by angry ghosts by night. In a way, Freddy was both victim and perpetrator, though not by his own will, but as a tool seized by larger forces of good and evil. We saw how remnant and possession blurred the line between life and machine. The concept of haunted metal meant that Freddy and his counterparts were never just cold robots on stage. They were haunted vessels containing the emotions, the agony and longing of children whose lives were cut short. For years, Freddy was literally filled with sorrow. The spirit of a child named Gabriel, according to lore, animating his suit, seeking the love of a family, and the revenge against the man who took it all away. Freddy's jovial face thus hid a storm of rage and pain. And in the shadows of the security office, when those eyes glowed and that electronic groan echoed, it was a child's soul crying out for justice. William Afton's role in all this cannot be overstated. He is the dark puppeteer behind the scenes, the reason Freddy became feared. Without William, Freddy Fazbear would have been just a friendly singing animatronic, no ghosts attached. But through Afton's crimes, Freddy became inadvertently tangled in a web of hauntings. It was Afton who created the circumstances for spirits to latch onto the animatronics via remnant. It was Afton's actions that turned a place of laughter into a haunted house of revenge. And ultimately, it was Afton who, in a cruel twist, ended up needing the very animatronic technology he corrupted, using it to extend his own life again and again. Every time he returned, as Springtrap, as Glitchtrap, as Burntrap, he co-opted some iteration of Freddy's creations to do so. An animatronic suit, a game starring Freddy, or the systems of the Pizzaplex. Freddy, as a character, was like a mirror reflecting the sins of Afton and the sorrows of his victims. Yet, in the final chapter of the story, we witnessed something extraordinary. Freddy as a force of good, Glamrock. Freddy's defiance of Afton's control and his protection of Gregory is a poignant bookend to the tale. After decades of being associated with the deaths of children, Freddy saved a child. It is as if, at long last, the spirits attached to the Fazbear name found a way to break the cycle and do what Charlotte's puppet always wanted: protect the innocent. Some fans speculate that perhaps Glamrock Freddy was even guided by Michael Afton's spirit, with evidence like calling Gregory Superstar, a nickname Michael's younger brother was said to have. Whether or not that's true, the symbolism is powerful. Freddy Fazbear, once a vessel of vengeance, became a guardian angel of sorts in those final hours, carrying Gregory to safety and ensuring the evil was confronted. And what of the spirits now? One likes to imagine that with Afton truly gone, or as gone as he can be, and the last establishment closed, those souls, including Charlotte's and the original missing children, have finally found peace. After all, Henry's words were an invitation to peace. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. The smoke has cleared. The long nightmare spanning decades might finally be over. The animatronics that were twisted by suffering can now remain still. Perhaps somewhere 5 children and one brave little girl in a striped shirt are laughing and playing together in the light, free from their metal prisons. As for Freddy's legacy in the world, it has become the stuff of legend. Cautionary tales whispered among those who were kids back in the 80s and 90s. Perhaps in this fictional universe, years later someone will open a Fazbear museum or release another game, keeping the memory alive in a way that's safely removed from reality. People will always be drawn to the mix of childhood nostalgia and the thrill of ghost stories, and Freddy's story provides both in abundance. Now, as our long night's tale comes to a close, imagine the quiet that finally fell over that last ruined pizza place. The arcade machines lie still and dark, their screens cracked and cold. The show stage is empty, instruments toppled and silent. No more children's footprints on the soft play area carpet. No more birthday candles to blow out. If you walk those halls in your mind's eye, you might still hear echoes, a faint giggle here, the note of a music box there, or the distant call of an animatronic saying good night. But those are just memories, lingering like ghosts until the dawn. Freddy Fazbear's story is a long and winding one, stitched together with equal parts wonder and horror. We have followed it from bright mornings full of laughter to the darkest nights filled with whispers and screams. We felt the innocence of a child hugging a mascot and the dread of a security guard in a locked room as footsteps approach. In the end, what can we take from it? Perhaps it's the idea that even the kindest, most joyful things can be twisted by cruelty, but also that evil, no matter how relentless, can eventually be overcome by courage and compassion. For every William Afton in the world of FNAF, there was a Henry or a Michael or a brave child like Gregory, willing to face the darkness. Even Freddy himself, a simple animatronic, harbored the potential for both destruction and salvation. The lore of FNAF, the lore of Freddy Fazbear, is ultimately a ghost story. It's about restless souls and the lengths they go to in order to be heard, to find justice, or to hold on to what was taken from them. It's about a father's grief warped into evil, and another father's grief driving him to set things right. And it's about an animatronic bear who stood at the center of it all, embodying whatever the moment required. Entertainer, monster, avenger, guardian. In the quiet moments, when you set aside the jump scares and the cryptic clues, there's a lingering sadness to Freddy's tale. Picture that very first diner again, Fredbear's family diner in a golden summer of the late 70s. See Fredbear on stage, arms open, children running towards him with ice cream on their faces. Hear the simple, tinny melody of his song about friends and fun. That was how it started, innocently, joyously. No one could have imagined then the dark turn that fate would take. The empty chairs, the headlines of missing kids, the boarded-up buildings. Yet in spite of everything, maybe something of that original innocence survived. Maybe it flickered back to life in Glamrock Freddy's kind voice. In that moment, he told Gregory, "I will protect you." Maybe it lives on in the bond formed between a child and an animatronic who broke free of his chains. For a series so full of darkness, FNAF's story ended, at least for now, on a surprisingly tender note. So now it is very late, or perhaps very early. The night has been long, and you have walked with me through every shadowy corridor of this story. We felt the weight of decades of lore in our bones. If your eyes are heavy, that's all right. You're allowed to rest now. Freddy and his friends have been laid to rest as well, their spirits finally given the chance to sleep. It's time to close the doors on Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria for good. Let the ghosts fade into the walls and the dust settle over the show stage. The tale is told, the final chapter is written. All that's left is the quiet, and perhaps a tear or two for all the souls that finally found peace. In this silence, carry with you a small piece of the story, a reminder that even in horror, there can be moments of bravery and even grace. Rest now, friend. The lights are off, the doors are shut, and the morning is just peeking over the horizon. Thank you for listening to this long, whispered history of Freddy Fazbear. May your dreams be free of lingering animatronics and flickering eyes in the dark. Instead, dream of a place where children's laughter echoes without fear, where friendly mascots stay friendly, and where every lost soul finds its way home. Good night, and sleep well.